She hadn't meant to stay awake that long again. But when pain makes a home inside your body, time becomes something you fight instead of follow. The clock said 4:47 a.m. when her eyes finally closed. It wasn't peaceful sleep, just exhaustion that finally dragged her under. The room was silent, the air still. For once, she thought she might make it to noon without interruption. Then the door creaked open. A thin blade of light cut across the carpet, followed by her husband's voice. "Hey," he whispered, standing halfway inside the bedroom. Her heart sank. It was always the same. "What?" she muttered, her voice raw from too little rest. "Do you know where the clean towels are?" 95% of viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free, takes seconds, and makes a real impact. Click subscribe and be part of the growth. Please turn on the bell for more updates. That was it. Not an emergency. Not anything that couldn't wait. She didn't even respond. He lingered, waiting for an answer that never came, before quietly shutting the door. She sighed, turning over. Her body ached, her mind buzzing. It would take at least 20 minutes for sleep to return. And when it finally did, the door opened again. This time it was about the mail, then about breakfast, then about nothing at all. He'd always been like this, restless in the mornings, full of energy. He went to bed around midnight and woke by 7. She envied him for that, even loved him for it once. But lately, his morning cheerfulness had started to feel like cruelty. Her own nights were endless. The chronic pain made it impossible to rest before her body was truly ready. So she drifted off at 4, sometimes 5 or 6, and slept until noon if she was lucky. They lived on different schedules, as if trapped in opposite time zones. He'd get up as she was just falling asleep. She'd told him before that these constant interruptions felt intentional. "It's like you're trying to annoy me into waking up," she'd said once. He had laughed, waving it off. "That's not how I mean it, so it's fine." But it wasn't fine. It was slowly driving her mad. Every morning, the same pattern repeated. She'd feel the cool air shift, hear the hinges creak, sense him hovering at the doorway. Sometimes he didn't even speak. He'd just stand there, watching her as though waiting for her to stir. She'd open one eye and glare, but he never seemed to take the hint. After days of this, she began to dread mornings entirely. Her heart would race at the smallest sound in the hallway. The space that once felt comforting, shared, familiar, had become suffocating. Even the bedroom no longer belonged to her. And then came the day that pushed her past the edge. It started like the others. She had fallen asleep around 5, her body heavy, her mind too tired to think. The world outside was quiet, but just a few hours later, a strange noise filled the air, a deep whirring hum followed by a dull thud, then another and another. She opened her eyes in confusion. The sound grew louder, closer. Something mechanical bumped against the bedpost, then the wall, the Roomba. Her husband had sent the Roomba into the room. She sat up, hair tangled, pulse pounding. The little robot roared around like a tiny beast, colliding with furniture, spinning aimlessly across the floor. It hit the nightstand, the closet door, the leg of the bed. Each impact was a small explosion in her skull. She pulled a pillow over her head, desperate for silence. But the sound wouldn't stop. The vacuum thudded and clicked and whined until she couldn't stand it anymore. When she stumbled into the kitchen 40 minutes later, bleary-eyed and furious, he was pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Did you seriously send the Roomba into the room while I was sleeping?" she snapped. He looked up, genuinely surprised. "Yeah, I thought it could clean while you were asleep." "I was asleep." He frowned, as though she were being unreasonable. "I didn't think it'd bother you that much." She stared at him, speechless. Something inside her, something patient, forgiving, endlessly understanding, cracked. She turned and walked back to the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. For a moment she just stood there, listening to the faint buzz of the house. Then she looked at the doorknob. Maybe tomorrow, she thought. I'll lock door after he gets up. But even that thought came with guilt. Would locking it make her the bad guy? Would people think she was childish, controlling? She wasn't trying to shut him out. She was just trying to sleep. She sat down on the edge of the bed, running her hands through her hair. The guilt twisted inside her like a knot she couldn't untie. She loved him. But love wasn't supposed to make you feel trapped in your own home. That night, she couldn't rest. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how a simple door could hold so much meaning. It wasn't just a barrier. It was a boundary. A fragile reminder that she still had control over something, even if it was just her own peace. She remembered when they were newly married. How he'd slip into bed late, careful not to wake her. How he'd bring her coffee in the morning, whispering good morning like a promise. Back then, every small gesture felt like love. Now, those same gestures felt like noise. Somewhere along the way, affection had turned into intrusion. Attention had turned into control. He didn't mean to hurt her, she knew that, but intent didn't erase exhaustion. She wondered how many other couples drift quietly into this kind of resentment, where one partner's habits slowly grind against the other until even kindness feels heavy. No yelling, no big betrayals, just a slow erosion of patience. When did their relationship start to feel like a negotiation? When did her needs become something he could shrug away? She didn't want to argue anymore. She didn't want to explain why being left alone mattered. She just wanted silence. Maybe locking the door would finally make him understand that silence wasn't rejection, it was survival. She could already picture the morning after she did it. He'd wake up, walk down the hall, reach for the handle, and it wouldn't turn. He'd probably knock, at first politely, then a little harder. Maybe he'd call her name. She'd stay quiet. He'd huff, frustrated, and walk away. Or maybe he'd wait outside, angry, waiting for her to unlock it. And when she did, they'd have the same argument they'd had a dozen times before. "You're locking me out of my own room? I'm trying to sleep. You don't need to take it that far. You didn't stop when I asked." It was always that loop, him defending, her explaining. But this time she wouldn't explain, because this wasn't about the door. It was about being heard, about finally saying, without words, "I can't keep living like this." He probably thought love meant presence, being around her, talking to her, filling every space. But love, real love, sometimes meant stepping back, giving quiet, letting the other person breathe. She thought about all the things she'd stopped doing because she was too tired, reading, painting, even laughing. The exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was emotional, the slow drip of never being allowed to rest. For her, locking that door wasn't rebellion, it was recovery. And yet, she still felt the ache of guilt. It was strange, loving someone so much that you felt bad for needing space from them. But that was the truth of their marriage now, a constant tug between closeness and suffocation. If she locked the door, she knew what would come next. The sulking, the silence, maybe even the accusation that she didn't love him anymore. But wasn't love also about trust? About believing your partner when they say, "I need this"? The next morning, as dawn crept through the curtains, she sat up in bed and watched the doorknob. Her heart beat faster with every small sound from the hallway. She knew he'd wake soon. She imagined the footsteps, the turn of the handle, the inevitable intrusion. And she realized something. She wasn't angry anymore. She was just tired. There's a kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than sleeplessness. It's the kind that comes from being unseen, unheard, and constantly interrupted. Would she really be the wibta if she chose peace over politeness? If she decided that her rest mattered just as much as his convenience? She thought about every time she'd been told to let it go. Every time he'd said, "It's not that big of a deal." Maybe to him it wasn't, but to her it was everything. She looked again at the door and whispered softly to herself, "It's not about keeping him out. It's about letting myself in." When you love someone, it's easy to believe that compromise means constant access, that marriage means no boundaries. But she was learning that even love needs space. Tomorrow, she'd go out and buy that lock. She'd install it herself if she had to, not to punish him, not to start another argument, but to remind them both that respect isn't given through words, it's shown through restraint. Maybe he'd be angry. Maybe he'd understand. Maybe it would take time. But one thing was certain. If she didn't draw this line now, she'd lose more than sleep. She'd lose herself. She turned off the lamp, exhaled slowly, and sank back into the pillow. The air felt different, lighter somehow, like the room had finally exhaled with her. Tomorrow morning, if he tried the handle, it wouldn't turn. And maybe, for the first time, he'd pause long enough to understand why. Because sometimes love isn't measured by how often you open a door, but by how long you're willing to wait on the other side. And as her eyes closed, for the first time in months, she didn't dread the morning. She welcomed it. Because finally, she knew what peace would sound like. Thanks for watching Story Frame. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more updates. See you in the next video.